Now you're welcome along. Football show is coming at you. Damien Delaney is going to join us very shortly. He was watching Manchester United losing to Spurs. He was watching Arsenal discover their new striker extraordinaire. And he was watching Manchester City very quietly rejuvenate is Damien's position on Man City. He thinks they have done outstanding business in January and he will explain. Will Slattery is here. Hello.
Hey Joe, how are things?
Very well. Busy today. In your feed, we will have League of Ireland podcast, Aidan Fitzmaurice in studio reflecting on the opening weekend. We will have Bits and Bobs where we'll cover the rest. And obviously Premier League here, front and centre. I did have a moment when James Maddison scored and then started celebrating. And did the shush. I thought, is that for Roy? Is that for Roy? And then when he threw the dart, these are some fairly specific markers.
Definitely. I think it wasn't very subtle.
No. He must be. If he was throwing the dart, who else could it be about? So Roy Keane on the overlap. You know, they were discussing Spurs and it's not going well and Ange. And someone suggested, well, you know, Maddison's back at the weekend. That could be something, Roy.
I'm on about players who would have an impact, real impact. And
I think the goalkeeper will have an impact.
Yeah,
listen,
yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got Maddison. I know that people say about
Hold on a second.
Maddison coming in.
We saw Maddison at Tamworth. He was taken off. Tamworth non-league. People say Maddison's the man. When's he going to step up to the plate? He got relegated with Leicester. He probably got relegated with Spurs. That's a good start.
Skilled Maddison. James, we got you.
Maddison isn't bad, but he's not at the darts. But let me tell you, if you think he's going to come back and get Spurs top 6, you're in cuckoo land. But if you're a player in the Spurs dressing room and Maddison's back in the squad, you wouldn't be looking and going, oh, gee, he's back today. Yeah, we're going to be fine.
I'd be happy if he's playing.
England had a squad of 300. You can't even get that. Don't kid yourselves, everybody.
Roy got back at 4 o'clock this morning, so he's a bit grouchy.
I can feel he's tired.
He's a bit grouchy.
No. I'd say that stung if you're James Maddison quite a bit when he's not at the darts.
Yeah, and the way he delivered that line as well, there was kind of a bit of extra relish, I thought, with it. And yeah, I'm curious as to how much players are paying attention to the overlap. It's so big and like the criticism is pretty hot and heavy on it of individual players, I would say.
Well, Maddison clearly was paying attention, or else it was just too big to ignore, as you say. So here he is in Sky Sports afterwards, being asked about the celebration.
I have to say, I enjoyed your celebration. A very precisely thrown dart and then a finger to the lips. Directed at anyone in particular?
Just a little bit of outside noise, wasn't there, this week?
A little bit.
But nah, listen, people have their opinions, but I wanted to do my talking on the pitch today, so I hope there's a certain few that enjoyed me being the match winner today, yeah. And no one's more critical of myself than me, you know. So outside gaffer, to be fair to the gaffer, he always talks about like blocking out the outside noise, but sometimes it's difficult, you know. It's constantly in your face and stuff. And
but sometimes can you actually use it? Not forget blocking it out. Use it as motivation.
You can use it, but I think the gaffer prefers when we're just in our little bubble and listening to him and stuff. But sometimes it's difficult because it's constantly in your face these days with social media and WhatsApp, people sending stuff, and you do see it and it is there. So
it all gets fed through to your phone straight away, pretty much.
Sometimes, but especially when it's a big profile name. But listen, it's about responding in the right way, and I did that today, and like I said, I was a match winner, so really, really delighted.
There was a he who shall not be named quality to that. Big profile name. We're both dancing around this. Just say Roy Keane to him.
High profile name, yeah. I also always find the idea funny that like, who in James Maddison's life is seeing that and immediately saying, you know what I need to do, send this to James Maddison.
I did think it was interesting he mentioned WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
WhatsApp. Yeah.
Like a friend is like, oh, James, did you see Roy Keane just called you this or that? Like, I tell you, the last thing you want to do is kind of send this to your friend and say, oh, look what was said.
Very much so, yeah, very strange. Now, unless he's in a WhatsApp group with his childhood male friends where there is a tradition of
taking the piss,
throwing each other at every moment, and it was just hilarity.
But you often hear athletes say that, oh, it's very hard to ignore. You have people sending it onto your phone. It's like, I'm like, who's you need to tell people in your life maybe not to send that stuff your way.
The thing is, like, Maddison's a very good player. And yet Roy Keane is also correct. Like, he's not going to be the totem pole upon which Spurs, like, rise to top 2, top 3 in the league. So it was extremely harsh in its delivery, but probably when you boil it all down and take away that when he's not at the darts, a fair-ish assessment. But like Maddison's, he's not going to hurt. He's not going to hurt any team. And his best performance this season was away at Manchester City when they won 4-0 and he scored 2 goals and worked exceptionally hard and everything came off. The thing is, though, he has not been part of the injury crisis, really. Like, Maddison has played 32 games this season. He's played 23 of the 25 Premier League games. So he sort of has been there, which was, in the overlap, they're saying, well, Maddison will be back. He sort of has been there the whole time. In his 23 Premier League matches, he has scored 9 goals and 4 assists. It's
okay.
It's okay.
Not bad.
When he's not at the darts.
Yeah. But it's funny, the darts is a throwaway line, but that was a bit of a lightning rod at the time. There was a period, remember, when I think he was sick or ill, and he couldn't be selected, and then he appeared at the Ali Pali, so it did get people's attention at the time. So it obviously stuck in Roy Keane's mind, and I think a few other people.
But isn't that the silliness, though, of the Premier League? It is entirely plausible that you would be fit enough to go and watch darts, but maybe not fit enough to partake in an elite Premier League game. It's not inconceivable.
Oh, of course, but the optics. These things are optics as well.
Optics. So Ange, relief, I think, the general tone of his press conference afterwards. Ruben Amorim all week had been juggling injury and sickness, and it was a messy week for Manchester United. So Ange, any sympathy for Amorim today?
Mate, if I check my office, I don't have any sympathy cards from other managers, so I can tell you that that hasn't happened. But there's definitely empathy there. I mean, I could see today Ruben, he's sort of had to put a team together, play players out of position, have kids on the bench. Well, welcome to my world, but that's for one game. Now do that for 2 months. Do that for 2 months. Any club, do that for 2 months, because I thought Man United were good today considering all that. And we had our days when we were good. We beat Liverpool in this spell. We had other significant victories, but do that for 2 months.
He's been really harping on this the last couple of media interviews about the injury crisis. But a manager's job is to adapt as well and to get the best out of the squad you have. He just seems fixated on it.
Interesting times at Spurs. Big protests outside the stadium against Daniel Levy pre-game. And they had a graphic up in Sky which did bring home the point of touch that Ange is doing reasonably well to hang on to his job at the moment. So they were 15th before kickoff. Obviously not now. They've gone up to 12th. But they were 15th before the kickoff. And Sky put up a graphic really of every Spurs manager since 2001, big enough sample size, and at what position in the league they were sacked at. And so Nuno Espirito Santo, 9th, gone. Conte was 4th. He sort of blew it up himself a little bit. Mourinho, 7th, gone. Villas-Boas, 7th, gone. Tim Sherwood, 6th, gone. The only comparable was Pochettino, 14th to Ange's 15th. So that kind of gave you a sense of, okay, he is doing quite well. And equally, the points tally from the 12 games up until you preceding your sacking, because obviously that's when things are coming to a head. And again, in a long list of managers, he was second bottom. Only Juande Ramos had fewer points from the 12 games before their sacking, 7 to Ange's 8. But the likes of Tim Sherwood, 19 points from 12, sacked. Villas-Boas, 18 points from 12, sacked. Mourinho, 17, sacked. Harry Redknapp, 16 points, sacked. And here is Ange with 8 points from 12. So it's either Levy is thinking, I sack him, they're really going to come at me, or maybe Europe saving him a touch. But then Mourinho was sacked obviously ahead of a cup final. I think it's just the injury crisis is what's keeping him.
Oh, it's not an invalid argument he's making. It's
no,
just, it's true. It's just, I suppose, the vociferous way he's making it is kind of starting to grate on me slightly. It's just funny you mentioned Tim Sherwood there. I just made me laugh, just that era, and he used to talk about his winning ratio and how he had the best win ratio of any Spurs manager. So it's funny that the numbers maybe back that up, that he actually was.
He's doing okay. This is a man who gave Harry Kane his debut,
Knew how to wear a gilet as well.
Yeah. So we'll talk Spurs United with Damien very shortly. Liverpool 2-1 win against Wolves. Cunha with a great consolation goal. Luis Diaz sort of bundling one in, very deliberately, but bundling one in, and Salah with the penalty. So that is a big 3 points for Liverpool, having dropped 2 at Everton, and with Villa away Wednesday and then Man City away on Sunday to come. Man City, who it seems have turned a corner. We'll discuss this in a bit more depth with Damien, but Pep has pronounced Nico Gonzalez as a mini Rodri. They had Omar Marmoush scoring a hat-trick, and Kushnerov played in defence and did pretty well by all accounts. So City hosting Liverpool Sunday.
And Madrid in the meantime as well.
Yeah. But that suddenly feels like, okay, Liverpool.
Yeah.
This is a week. Albeit Arsenal are reduced to playing a man who's never played up front in his life in Moreno. He said not since he's 8 years old has he played up front.
And the idea that he was only informed very close to kickoff seems kind of a bit strange by Mikel Arteta. I thought they would have drilled it all week and really, talked through various scenarios. Not so, apparently. Mikel Marino was informed very shortly before the team was named.
I thought that too, because this isn't a kid where, like, Mikel is going to be nervous if I tell him. Like, he's played lots of games. Just maybe tell him on Tuesday, I'm thinking of playing you up front.
I guess it worked out. He scored 2 goals, but at the same time, I think maybe with some more lead-in time to know his role, it could have maybe gone even better. But that's one of the really interesting moves.
We had, by the way, after that game, which Damien saw, and we'll chat to him about Marino, see if he's the answer. We had a reunion between Martin Keown and Ruud van Nistelrooy. And so there was an initial shaking of hands, and Keown was like, sorry for, the stuff. And Ruud's like, oh, no, it's all, listen, on the pitch. We had great battles. We did. Keown very relieved. But then said several times, he stood on my toe a lot, though. But he stood on my toe, getting his. I'm not the baddie in this one.
Yeah, Martin Keown is funny. Like his punditry, he's so mannered in his punditry. It's so at odds with that kind of snarling image we have of him like taking on Van Nistelrooy that time after the missed penalty. But yeah, that was a funny moment.
And then just to mention, finally, Everton. They have won away at Palace 2-1 without Dominic Calvert-Lewin, without Decore suspended, and DA as well. So David Moyes, first game obviously was a loss to Aston Villa, 15th of January. Since then, beat Spurs 3-2, beat Brighton away, 4-0 win against Leicester, the draw with Liverpool, and now a 2-1 win away to Crystal Palace. When he took over, they were 1 point outside the relegation zone. 3 wins in 19 matches, and now 6 games in, he's scored 12 goals, and they're top of the David Moyes league. Since David Moyes has taken over league, in 6 games, they're joint top on 13 points with Arsenal. It's really phenomenal.
And I think what's impressed me is that they found goals quite easy to come by, because that was the real, I suppose, sticking point towards the end of Sean Dyche's tenure, is how much they were struggling to score. But you mentioned a couple of the scorelines there, that they've racked up a lot of goals as well, which has been very impressive. And yeah, top of the form table. And now it's kind of seeing, can we get into the top half of the table? Can we make a charge there? Relegation is distantly in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, really incredible job. Kind of happy for him.
Yeah.
Rocky post-Everton times, but that's really impressive. The football show is with thanks to Sky Sports. You can enjoy lots of exclusive live sport, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend, not least Man City, Liverpool this Sunday. There's also every golf major, the Ryder Cup this year, every F1 race, Premier League darts, the 2025 Lions Tour, and much more. Let's hear from Damien Delaney. Damien Delaney with us. Hey, how you doing?
Hey Joe, how good?
So Manchester United are 8 points off relegation. They are 31 points off top spot, which puts things into context. Ruben Amorim's lucky he's good in press conferences right now. That's kind of all he's got to offer just at the moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you opened with that, Joe. That was a strong one to open with. Yeah, look, watching him yesterday, I think he's going to have to start taking some amount of responsibility. I think a couple of weeks ago you and me spoke, and I said that he was going along the lines of bloody revolution over evolution, and he's just kind of laying it all bare. And if he doesn't get what he wants, then he's probably going to walk away or get fired. But he's not compromising his belief system. But watching yesterday, I think he needs to. I'm not necessarily saying that he should change his shape, but the implementation of what he's asking them to do is so bad. Like, Jed Spence got man of the match because of the speed with which they revert into a flat back five. I just don't understand it. You watch the goal again, right? It's really interesting to see. So you have Matthias Tell makes a run, and Diego Dallo is playing right wing back, and Diego Dallo tracks him all the way in to between the width of the goal. And there's 2 centre-backs inside of Mazraoui and Maguire doing nothing. So you've got 3 players now marking 1. And who's the back post spare but Son, right? I mean, the job of a wing-back there, if Tell makes that run, all you've got to do is scream to Mazraoui, you take him and I can stay wide. So he's operating like a right-back in a back 4, where he might have to track the run because one of the centre-backs is busy. And you know what? We leave the least danger, and the least danger is the man out the back. And when the cross goes out the back, I'll get out there and deal with it. But if you watch it, there's 3 of them marking 1. Maguire's doing nothing, Mazraoui's doing nothing, and Dallo is in on top of Mazraoui. Ball goes out the back, gets fired back across goal, and that's where the goal comes from. But when I say they revert into a back five, Dalot just goes straight back in, and then Jed Spence comes out at left back, and the ball kept getting rolled out to him.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, but anybody could play at left back if they're under no pressure inside the Manchester United half.
Yeah, and it was notable. Gary Neville in the first couple of minutes called this as bad situation. Just this is not going to work. And it seemed in a way it was initially to protect Zirkzee, because he had played as one of the two behind a striker against Newcastle, and it was a disaster, and he was subbed after 20 minutes. And so there was almost a sense of, well, unlike Ahmed, if he was there, you don't have to worry about Spence, the left back. So he kind of stayed sort of central. And then Bruno, who was central with Casemiro. So Bruno's doing shuttle runs back and forth to Spence, which is just a terrible use of everyone's time, leaving Casemiro on his own. And meanwhile, and I think it's your core point, Dalot's back there with his four mates going, we're okay back here. You guys...
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And that's, I think that's where he has to start taking responsibility. Like, I'm all for if he wants to play this system, right? And he wedded to his beliefs and he says, this is how we're playing. But at least do it. Implement how you play that system. I'm probably boring, but like I worked the Atalanta game during the week against Brugge, and you just watch them playing it, and that's how they do it. The wing back is not a defender. He's a winger almost. So it's his job to stay high, stay wide, and engage with Jed Spence on the halfway line. Then it's Mazraoui's job to release from right side centre-back. And if he has to go all the way out to the touchline, out to Matthias Tell or Son, or whichever one of them is out there at the time, then so be it. But then that leaves Harry Maguire spare in the middle on his own. But if Diogo Dalot releases, it keeps Bruno Fernandes in the middle of the park. It keeps Zirkzee in the middle of the park. So then you get that box of midfield of four that he's looking for with Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, Zirkzee, and who was the other one? The other inverted.
It was Garnacho.
Garnacho, there you go. Sorry. So you keep that box. So you keep your core of your team, the pillar of your team intact.
Yeah.
But as soon as Dalot drops off, and then it looks good because, it's almost like a comfort in numbers thing. We're along the edge of our 18-yard box and there's five of us and we're grand. The midfield is getting torn to shreds. The two number 10s are doing doggies. And eventually, any team with a modicum of quality will get you. And Spurs did get you.
We're having this chat quite a bit about United under Amorim. There was a moment where Dalot was in conversation with Amorim on the touchline when this dynamic was like playing out again and again and again and again. And Amorim did seem to be almost saying to him, you push up was the advice. But like, Dalot should know that at this stage with this system. And then it's not like he overly did start pushing up, like Bruno's still doing those shuttle runs out.
I don't think so, because like this is what you do on a weekday leading into the match, team shape. That's what you're doing. So you're creating, a lot of teams will do it against mannequins, a lot of teams will do it against, one or two players, but a lot of it you're speaking through. So the manager is explaining to him, and when that ball goes to Jed Spence, Diogo, you have to be the one that engages. You and him. You're in a 1v1 battle on that side, and you're going to come out on top. So you're going to stop that out ball to him, and then when we win it back, you're in a position to counterattack. So now when Bruno turns the ball over, you're on the halfway line, and you're an option for us now. But even when Manchester United did turn the ball over, Diogo Dalot's in with the back five.
What was the story there? Because Dalot is fit. He can run. He's actually been one of in what's been a shaky time, one of Manchester United's reasonable performers over the last 12 months or so. I would think he can take instruction. I would think Amorim's looking at the back five, Bruno trucking out, no control of the game, thinking, well, this isn't what I want. And yet somewhere there's a disconnect. That's why it's like, well, why isn't this one working? Will we just sack him? Is that where we are?
No. By the way, we're being unfair to Spurs here. I think watching what Spurs did, they probably forced a lot of this.
Okay.
If you watch, Jed Spence kind of went in the pitch a little bit, and Mazraoui sometimes was the one coming into midfield. So now we were left with this back five with Mazraoui coming in, and then Diogo Dalot was still pinned in as a wing back. I would much prefer it the other way around. I would prefer Dalot to come out and engage with Jed Spence and then Mazraoui. But it spreads out the back five. And I promise you, if Mazraoui starts heading out towards the touchline towards Son, because Dalot's 25 yards further up the pitch engaging with Jed Spence in the halfway line, Harry Maguire is going to have a conniption. He will not be happy stood in the middle of the pitch on his own.
Do you think would you be shocked if verbally Maguire wasn't saying stay, keeping everyone in nice and tight?
I would. There's an argument for that. Yeah. The one thing you want to do with Casemiro, it's almost cruel and unusual punishment at this stage. It really is.
Yeah.
You know, I had a huge amount of sympathy for him yesterday because, you know, in his prime, the job he's been asked to do would have been very, very difficult because you have to cover a huge amount of ground. When Bruno goes out, all of a sudden now no midfield player wants to be stood in the middle of the pitch with 20 yards right and left, and Spurs players rotating in and out of those spaces. It's very, very difficult because it's like whack-a-mole. You go and stop one, another one pops up somewhere else. You know, it's difficult. So what you want to do when you realise you have somebody like that in your team is you want to get him insulated. So you kill those spaces either side of him so he can just go to work in his little bits of pockets of space, and he's reading the game and he's making interceptions and he's filling passing lanes. But just the way they're operating that system, and that's why, just to bring it back to my point, this is where he has to start taking some responsibility, the manager, now, because if you want to play this system, I mean, it almost looks like he's washing his hands of the whole thing. You know, he's like, well, this isn't this is not what I asked for. You know, you told me that you'd give me signings. They got one signing in January. Was it Dorgu was the only signing that they had? So he's probably really annoyed that they didn't turn the squad over at least 2 or 3 in, 2 or 3 out in January. Dorgu didn't come till late in the window. But again, that just feeds into the problems that's at Manchester United now.
So here's his body of work at this stage. It feels like a long time ago now. November 24th, Ipswich away, Ed Sheeran, Sky Sports interviews. We were all you were giving us our the beginnings of our PhD in the 3-4-2-1 system. That was a 1-1 draw. And then they beat Everton 4-0 at home when Everton were really struggling, and you thought, okay, here we go. But since then, lost to Arsenal away, lost to Nottingham Forest. They beat Man City, was the big one for him, December 15th. Then lost to Bournemouth, lost to Wolves, lost to Newcastle at home, where Newcastle ran all over them. That was the Eriksen Casemiro in midfield night, December 30th. They got the draw with Liverpool. Again, those Liverpool-Man City results have actually stemmed what otherwise I think would be a tidal wave of criticism. But that was followed up with a win against Southampton, and you thought, okay, corners being turned here mid-January. But since then, January 19th, lost to Brighton, lost to Crystal Palace, lost to Spurs, won a win in there against Fulham, where they weren't very good. So their last 4 league games, just really not good. 3 losses, 1 win, but they were lucky to win that game. The danger for Amorim now is he gets to summer, if this continues, really damaged. Like, you know, everyone's, it's good he gets us, you know, he's joining now, and he'll realise how bad things are ahead of the summer, and he'll get his feet on the table, and he'll be able to really hit the ground running over the summer. I now think that may have happened too early. I now think it would have been good if he'd got the job March 24th, not November 24th, because he could be borderline lame duck with people by the time summer comes if he doesn't sort something out.
Yeah, that's true. We said that at the time as well, that there's a reason he didn't want this job till the summer, because he wanted the club. Like, he would have obviously been, even if he didn't get the job, he still would have been in contact with the people at Manchester United, building his team. A little bit like Pep before he got the Man City job. Remember, his whole team was in place, and he came in and everything was how he likes it. I think Amorim was hoping for that, but United gave him this ultimatum of it's now or never. And he decided, look, I'll come in now and do what I can. But you're right, by the time he gets to the summer, he could be emotionally shot. Like, he could just have been through the ringer for the last 9 months. And by the time we get to the summer, I think he's probably really disappointed that they didn't get more out and more in January. Like, because he was thinking, well, if I can get 2 or 3 out in January and 2 or 3 in, and then in the summer, get 2 or 3 out, 2 or 3 in, that's 6 or 7 out, 6 or 7 in at the start of next year. And now I've got a good start point, a good base point, a jump off point to go to work. Yeah. But he's just going through the ring. It's only going to get worse for him as well. You know, those 2 results against the big boys are a result of they were counter-attacking, they got pinned in, and that system is totally is kind of used in a total different manner. And then Southampton. I mean, you know, everyone's beating up on them. But I agree though. I think he's going to be emotionally destroyed by the time the summer comes around, and pre-season he'll just be dreading it. Yeah.
And is he dead in the water now as a coach if he moves away from 3-4-2-1? Just in a horses for courses, we need to just, like, a certain challenge this weekend. I know a 4-4-2 would be better. Can he do that, or will he look silly? Will he look panicky?
I mean, he could do it, but he'd have to walk back an awful lot of statements. And he'd have to explain in a very, very articulate way why he's doing it. I don't think he will. Okay. I think he's that wedded to what he's doing. My problem isn't the fact that he's playing that shape. It's the way he's implementing it.
Fair point. Okay, yeah.
You're losing games of football implementing it this way. just implement it the way it's supposed to be implemented. And if you're losing, then you can at least say, well, we're putting the building blocks in place and players are getting through. But the way they're playing is atrocious, and they look beat. They do. I mean, all the players look beat. And then it doesn't help Rashford going to Villa and actually having a good game. And then Anthony has started really well at Sociedad. I mean, every time a player leaves Manchester United, they seem to get a second wind. So I don't know what it is about that club.
It's the kiss of life. It's so interesting. Zirkzee was very prominent yesterday. He's had an interesting start to his Manchester United career, obviously, the low point being the boos at Newcastle. But that was building because he'd been really, really poor up until that point. That wasn't just, he's done okay and now we're going to boo him for no reason. I think there was a frustration with them. Yesterday he was a bit, he was more involved than he's been in lots of games. And there were moments of that's a nice touch or that's a nice turn. I don't know what you make of it. I found myself watching him going, you're sort of like Berbatov light here. You've got some nice touches, and you're doing things at your own you're doing things at your own languid pace, but actually most of it's not really coming off.
Yeah. Any of us would be lying if we said we knew Zirkzee before he signed for Manchester United. We weren't connoisseurs of European football to that extent, so none of us really know what he is. We were told, of his attributes, the things he's good at, and what he can bring to the team. And having watched him for the last few months, I still don't know what his position is, what his best position is. I still don't know what his best attributes are. He seems to be really half decent at a lot of things, but not amazing at any one thing.
Yeah.
They tried him as a number 9. He's not lightning quick. I'm not saying he's slow, but he's not electric. He's not physical enough to play up against 2 centre backs. So I think false 9 was the term that people are saying that's his best role. But Manchester United don't play with a false 9, so why did they sign a player like Zirkzee? Which again goes back to recruitment. Why was he brought into the team? Okay, so they're going to play with these inverted wingers, which means Manchester United now are going away from the blueprint that they've always had. We play with wingers, chalk on the heel to get the ball wide, we get crossed in the box. That's the Manchester United way. And your man Amorim wants to play with this system where the wide players are tucked inside and the wing backs provide the width. So I think there could be a role there from. He just got off to an incredibly difficult start. But if you're playing with these inverted wingers now, where does Garnacho go? Because he's a chalk, and obviously that's why they got rid of the likes of Anthony and Rashford, because they are wingers, or they want to play in the wide areas out in the touchline. So maybe it is the beginning of Manchester United shifting to this system and trying to give Amorim what he wants. I wouldn't write him off yet. You're right. He has some nice touches. He's half decent.
I'm kind of writing him off, to be honest. I am. Yeah, I just don't see it. He was better yesterday than he's been. But and even this business of, no, you don't have to worry about trucking out to the Ahmad will do it, but you don't have to chase out Spence. I don't think he's fit either. He doesn't. He doesn't look mobile. Yeah, look, I mean, he can run, but he's not electric. He's not sharp. He's not dynamic. He's not explosive. He seems very one-paced. You're right, Berbatov light is probably a fair assessment, but without the silky touch and the ability to retain possession. If you're going to be Berbatov, you need off the chart skill, where he's like nice.
Yeah, functional in the middle, where the ball gets played into him, he does keep it reasonably well. But I think once the team starts taking shape, now when that is, I have no idea. But once Manchester United start taking shape in Amorim's vision of what he expects them to be, I think you might see a different Zirkzee. I'm not prepared to write him off just yet. I think he still has something to offer.
Okay. Manchester City 4, Newcastle 0 was an eye-catching result. A lot of people would have presumed in advance of this game that Newcastle would have run all over Man City, and then the opposite happened. So City have Real Madrid obviously to come, followed by Liverpool at home on Sunday. Omar Marmoush with the hat-trick stole the headlines. Nico Gonzalez stole Pep Guardiola's heart, though. So he said, I think the presence of Nico, he was playing in midfield with Gundogan, helped us a lot because of, and this is just the way Pep talks, stay with me a second, because of 10 balls, the 50-50s. He wins 7 and we can run. When you lose 7 of 10, they will run. He said, I have the feeling the club has bought an incredible player for the future in terms of his mentality. He's our mini Rodri. He has huge presence, his pace, and his time at the Barcelona Academy. It's all about the ball and positioning. So this was high praise for Nico Gonzalez in midfield.
Yeah, and he was every bit as good as Pep is saying he is. We covered the game for Premier on Saturday. and we did a player piece after the game on him. He was that good. If you squinted your eyes, you would have thought it was Rodri. Came out of that Barcelona academy, and you could just see it, the way they manipulate the ball, the way they play one touch, the way they fire. It was Busquets-esque, firing passes between lines into attacking midfield players. Foden was getting service. All of a sudden, you started seeing Ederson absolutely rifling balls like he always used to, through the Manchester City's back three, into the midfield, into Nico Gonzalez, because he can take the ball in those situations. Now I know the goal came from Ederson firing a long ball up to Marmoush for the first goal, but like his passing in the first minute, considering he'd made the mistakes against Real Madrid, the ball comes back to him, you're expecting, right, just go off the front, settle yourself down. And the first ball, he just rifled this pass through a flurry of players, and somehow it's found its way, I think, to Nico Gonzalez's feet in the centre circle. I mean, we just looked at each other and went, Jesus almighty. But when you have that player in there that can take it, that can manipulate the ball, always seems to turn out the right way when he takes it in traffic, always seems to find the correct exit to where he wants to go. He was outstanding, truly outstanding. Marmoush will take the headlines, absolutely, for his hat-trick. But I thought Nico Gonzalez and our friend Kusanov, by the way, we're starting to see why he is talked about it in the player that he was. He is an absolute monster. He is one of the quickest players I think I've seen. Super aggressive. He's raw. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a finished article by any stretch, but he is as quick as I've seen. He looks like Kyle Walker quick. When that ball gets played down the side, he chews up the ground. And I suppose what he does then is he barges into people to use his strength. I think those Uzbekistan guys, they're just, the low size, are thick. There's a lot of good UFC guys coming out of Uzbekistan, and that part of the world, and he looks like that. He's just low size, really well built. His hip area is just huge. Look like ultra strong, capable on the ball. Probably aerially, because he is so short, he might struggle. But I mean, his aggression, and after the Chelsea game and our discussion, I was so happy to see him play well. So basically, we talked about those three players that were brought in, and the three of them have hit the ground running, and you can see City starting to take shape. And just to bring it back to our conversation about Manchester United, it is so impressive how quickly Man City have turned that squad over in one window. Because the cracks started appearing in Manchester City's squad, I'd say October, November time, where you started thinking, oh, hang on a minute, we've got problems here. Obviously, they could do nothing about it. But when a club is as well run and has the structures in place and the scouting system and the director of football roles all filled, the moment that Pep said, okay, we got a problem here, we got to turn the squad over, Kyle Walker left, and they rejuvenated the midfield. Nico Gonzalez came in, Marmoush came in, probably as an attacking player that you might have felt they didn't really need, because they had Phil Foden, but his form was off as well. Jack Grealish, we're not sure where his future lies, and I think Kevin De Bruyne's best days are behind him, but obviously still has a lot to offer. So they're rejuvenating areas of the pitch that they feel, but they did it in a blitz-like fashion in January, where they just went bang, 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 210 million spent, and they have the money in the bank because the last few years, I'm not going to get into the charges because they all stem from an era of, I think it's 2012 to 2015, Pellegrini time. So, the sale of Alvarez, the sale of Zinchenko, the sale of Gabby Jesus, the sale of Cole Palmer, they are generating money. Their academy is generating money. The club is generating money. They're turning a profit. So they have 210 million, but they spend 50 million on Nico Gonzalez. And, I cover European games all the time, and I've watched him play for Porto. Watched him last year. He was only at Porto for a year, but we watched him last year. I think he was at Valencia previous to that. So, he's somebody that we would have been aware of. No, I thought he was good, but I didn't think he was as good as what I saw on Saturday. I mean, He stepped into that team incredibly well. And I think as well, they're not going to stop now. So, they have, I would say, Kovacic, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, Kyle Walker. They will all be ushered out the side door in the next 6 months. They would probably, some of them might even be told around now, hey, look, thanks for the memories, in a very, very good way. And they say, look, you've been great for us, but we need to move on. The club needs to move on. We think it'd be best if you found another club, and we're willing to help you. We're going to give you some money to leave, or we're going to help you if you want to go to Saudi, or wherever you want to go, we're going to help you. And we're not going to ask for a huge fee for you. Obviously we will need something, but, we're going to move you guys on. And I think those players will be told in a manner that they will say, yeah, that's fair enough. And they will leave the club. And then they'll probably add another 2 or 3 in the summer. under the radar. And next September, we'll all look at Man City's squad and go, Jesus, you know, it was only 12 months ago we thought they were finished. And now they've got 7 out and 7 in 2 windows, and they're primed for another period of success. And that is the beauty of having a really, really well-run football club. And you can't deny it. You can disagree with Man City and the charges and the money and all that you want, but the behind the scenes of that football club is just as well run as you're going to get to see. And I think that's why they took Omar Barada out of Man City into Manchester United, because Man United want to get those structures in place, and they probably don't have them yet, which is probably why they couldn't turn the squad over in Amorim's liking. You know, Barada will be building relationships with people in South America. You know, you get these kids and you find these young players because you have relationships with clubs like Santos. You have relationships with Brazilian underage coaches. You have relationships with, so you're knowing all these kids that are coming through. You've a network of scouts. You've a network of agents working for you throughout the world, and that's what Omar Barada is probably busily trying to put in place right now to catch up with the likes of Man City, Real Madrid, you know, because those clubs have those markets looked after. So any kid, 12, 13 years of age, I can promise you Man City are aware of, you know, the Brazil under-14 team, you know, who's in it, who looks good, who do you think is going to be the next one. So they're looking that far into the future.
That's fascinating on City. Wow. I mean, that's a major upturn in how they're feeling about life all of a sudden if all that's borne out.
Yeah. On
Kushnerov and his big hips and his big glutes. Generally, I think of you footballers, and I think of the skinny little snake hips as the more prevalent body shape. Like some exceptions, you know, Kenny Dalglish back in the day and his bum into you, and Rooney was kind of big hipped. Would you see big hips as a good thing in a footballer?
Yeah, I suppose when you break into that, so you can be big and strong, but cumbersome. These guys are as explosive and as dynamic as you're likely to see. I mean, Kusanov, you watch him, he's going in one direction, all of a sudden he plants one of his feet and he just explodes in another direction. So strong. And to be that, you do have to be big and strong around the hip area, around the glute area, around your hamstrings, your quads, your calves. I mean, you have to be really, really strong. Cesar Azpilicueta was probably one of the first ones, you know, those low size.
Yeah.
And he was as explosive as I saw. The two that I saw that were as explosive as that was Ivanovic at Chelsea at right back. My God, he was like a monster. Like you see him like in the tunnel before a game, you're like, oh my, his calves are like huge. Like you can just see, you know, he has trouble walking, that he's that big. But very explosive. Azpilicueta was the first one where I just saw him as a 1v1 defender, you know, just really get in tight, get low, and then just has that explosion. So, excuse me, when I say big around the hips, I'm not saying that like they're squatting 200 kilos and all that stuff. You know, that could be very, very, you know, you could be one pace there, cumbersome, carrying a lot of weight. I mean, these guys are just like hugely explosive, and that's what he is. That's what, you know, like Kyle Walker was. He was a different build, but Kusanov, I was watching him during the game, and you know, during the game you're building pieces for stuff you want to do afterwards, stuff you want to do at half time. And we were building like a Nico Gonzalez piece, and we had a Kusanov piece, and we were kind of talking which one will we go with. And we thought, well, Nico Gonzalez is probably the more relevant in so far as how City played. But you could equally have run the Kusanov piece, and he was good. No, there was a lot of raw moments in there where he slightly got it wrong. His timing was off. He barged into people. There was a couple of times where he just didn't stop because he's trying to like force his will onto the opposition. But he learned that, you know, once he starts learning the ins and outs of the Premier League. But what a attribute to have, that level of pace that you can afford to go as tight as you want, and you don't care if that ball gets spun in behind, because you're like, I dare you, spin it in behind and we'll have a race, because I know that I'm going to win that race. A little bit like Kyle Walker had that as well. So yeah, look, I think it's really impressive. You know, Man City will be looking now at their squad. I'm not sure if Ederson's days are numbered or not. You know, his 2 mistakes against Madrid, I'm not sure what's going on with him. He had to spell out of the team as well. But you know full well that Man City have the type of network in place that they're already planning for, even the likes of Ruben Diaz, Ederson. You know, they have lists of names of players, like 18, 19-year-old people that in a year or two are going to be what they want. And they'll have them lined up, and they'll have relationships built with the agents, and they'll have relationships built with the clubs And when they need them, they'll go and get them.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of a well-run club.
Before you go, I know you watched Leicester 0, Arsenal 2. Mikel Moreno was grabbing the headlines because, he was thrown in as striker. He said afterwards he's never played there in his life. He hadn't even trained there during the week, let alone before that. He was just told kind of morning of the game, you're going to go in as striker. He was asked, like, have you literally ever been up front? And he said, I think, 1 or 2 games when I was 8. Yeah. So it's not bad to come away with 2 goals.
Yeah, he looked like a Joe's performance in terms when he was up there.
I was going to say, it was flat. Kind of, they haven't found the new answer to their problems here.
The 2 goals fool you.
Okay,
like Arsenal was struggling. They weren't. It wasn't a case of a backs to the wall job. Leicester will argue that they had a few chances as well, and maybe perhaps should have taken the lead. But it was a very, I won't say flat, but it was an uninspiring performance. So they got it done eventually, and that's fine. And we always say when Liverpool get the performance over the line, well, that's what you do. You get wins when you're not playing well. But Saka missing out of that team is huge. Havertz obviously going out for the season now. They're really going to struggle. To keep pace with Liverpool. Everyone is saying, well, it's only 7 points, we can get it down. But that squad, when you have to play the likes of Marino up front, you might get away with it against Leicester. They have Champions League commitments as well. So it's going to be difficult for them to keep pace with Leicester as the pace picks up between now and the end of the season, which it inevitably will, because Liverpool will start heading for the finish line. They will get a bit of a gallop up. I think Arsenal might struggle to stay with them. I think Man City will probably get closer to Liverpool, I'd say, than Arsenal will between now and the end of the season. That is a huge shout from me, Joe. I don't say there are any enormous conviction, but if we sat down in May and Man City finished second, 7 points behind Liverpool, and Arsenal were third, 10 or 11 points behind Liverpool, I think that's probably looking more likely now. City are... It was Newcastle they played on the weekend as well, and they absolutely annihilated Newcastle in the form that they're in. So,
are you to finish then? Are you giving City a bit of a sniff all of a sudden away to Madrid?
No, absolutely. Oh, away to Madrid. Sorry, I thought you meant for the league.
No,
sorry.
Let's be serious a minute. They've won 1 game here.
Sorry. So away to Madrid. It was really interesting. I was thinking about this yesterday. Like, we all felt that they left De Bruyne, Kovacic, Bernardo Silva on the bench because they were keeping them for the Bernabeu during the week. But I tell you what, the way they played on Saturday against Newcastle, Marmoush might keep his place.
Yeah.
I think that Nico Gonzalez will undoubtedly play, but who plays alongside him? Will he keep Gundogan in there? Will he play De Bruyne with him? I know that Ake and Diaz were rested. I wasn't sure.
They're sweating on them.
Yeah. Pep was a bit unclear in his pre-match interview. We couldn't figure out whether he was saying he was resting them or they were in trouble.
Well, he said Diaz told him he had 20 minutes in him.
Yeah.
So he said, well, okay, both of you just rest for the Bernabeu was the sense.
Yeah, but I think, you know what, man, if you're going to go forward with Kusanov, I would keep him in the team. Now, I know Akanji's out, so Kusanov might play right back. He might be bumped out one. But I think Savinho, by the way, there's another one we forgot that they brought in the summer.
Yeah.
I thought he played really well the other on Saturday as well. So I don't think they're going to get anything against Real Madrid, but I think they'll put up a fight and make it a good game.
That is us for this Monday. That was so interesting, so good. Thank you so much.